Welcome to the Shadow of History channel. Be sure to subscribe so that you don't miss out more videos like this one. This heart-wrenching recreation shows the final claustrophobic moments of Kyle Plush in 2018, an Ohio teenager who fought for his life inside a minivan, reaching for help that arrived too late despite his desperate, repeated calls to emergency dispatchers. The complexity of justice is laid bare in this courtroom moment, where a football player was declared not guilty of murder after a fatal confrontation in a case that forced a divided public to confront prejudice and identity. Steeped in the soft, experimental hues of a 1914 autochrome, King George V stands beside the young Prince of Wales, capturing a rare moment of royal continuity and quiet fatherly pride just months before the world descended into war. In a candid 1962 moment captured through a bathroom mirror, our Princess Margaret balances regal tradition with rebellious intimacy, wearing her wedding tiara in the tub as her husband, Lord Snowdon, freezes this iconic private scene in time. Losing his cool in Los Angeles, a disheveled John Lennon was famously ejected from the Troubadour Club in 1974, sporting a sanitary towel on his head and offering a biting, drunken retort to the waitress who finally challenged him. Tension turns to a sudden polarized explosion of emotion at Augustana College in 1995 as students watch the televised verdict of the O.J. Simpson trial, a moment that instantly mirrored the deep racial and social divisions across America. Frozen in a grainy surveillance frame from 1992, Vicki Weaver stands unaware of the looming tragedy at Ruby Ridge, where a government siege would soon claim her life and the life of her young son in a brutal escalation. The eccentric Oscar Acosta finds a brief moment of literary fame in this 1970s portrait. Yet the man who inspired a counterculture legend would mysteriously vanish into thin air just months later, leaving behind an enduring and haunting mystery. Driven by a chillingly simple motive, Brenda Spencer forever changed the quiet landscape of 1979 San Diego when she opened fire on her school, tragically choosing a weapon of war over the medical help her family had ignored. This harrowing scene in Ohio captures the chilling aftermath of a mother's unthinkable choice to abandon her newborn in a trash bin, followed by a series of cold, detached messages that revealed a shocking lack of maternal remorse. Amidst the unimaginable horror of Sandy Hook, teacher Victoria Soto became a shield for her students, sacrificing her own life to mislead a gunman and ensure the small children hidden in her classroom lived to see another day. Walking the streets of Sligo in 2009, the man known as Peter Bergman carefully erased every trace of his existence, leaving investigators with a nameless body and a trail of cryptic CCTV footage that remains an unsolved Irish mystery. Caught in a 1944 mugshot that reflects the harsh social policing of the era, a 19-year-old Phyllis Stelnaker was branded a criminal for the simple, desperate acts of being homeless and possessing a plant that modern society now views differently. The silence outside this Texas home in 2001 masks the profound tragedy within, where police officers stood guard after Andrea Yates took the lives of her 5 children, sparking a national conversation about postpartum psychosis and mental health. Beneath the harsh glow of industrial lamps in 1941, the textile mills of New Bedford hummed with a relentless energy, capturing the grueling reality of Massachusetts laborers who worked through the night to fuel the American war effort. In a dark chapter of Canadian history, These children represent over 1,000 indigenous students subjected to cruel nutritional experiments, where researchers documented their starvation and suffering instead of providing the basic care and dignity they deserved. For years, a mysterious DNA profile haunted investigators across Germany, leading them on a desperate hunt for a phantom serial killer who seemed to vanish into thin air, only to discover a shocking truth about contaminated forensic tools. A sharp contrast in ideologies is captured in 1973 as a North Vietnamese officer laughs at the peace symbol worn by his American captive, highlighting the bitter irony of a war fought for peace amidst such profound suffering. Miraculously surviving a 2-mile plunge from a shattered airplane in 1971, Julianne Koepke endured 10 grueling days alone in the Amazon jungle, fueled by an incredible will to live that remains one of history's greatest feats of survival. Captured in a final heroic transit across the Brooklyn Bridge, the crew of Ladder 118 raced toward the Twin Towers on September 11th, leaving behind this haunting image of brave men heading toward a sacrifice that would never be forgotten. Defying the poisonous atmosphere of the 1936 Berlin Olympics, Jesse Owens and his German rival Lutz long shared a legendary bond of sportsmanship, proving that human connection and mutual respect can transcend even the most hateful political ideologies. Wading through radioactive waters beneath the 1986 Chernobyl disaster, these 3 men volunteered for a suicide mission to prevent a massive steam explosion, successfully saving millions across Europe through an act of unparalleled and selfless courage. Returning to their California home in 1945, a Japanese-American family is met with the ugly reality of hate, finding their property defaced with racial slurs after years of unjust internment had already stripped them of their basic dignity. The brutal lynching of Mary Turner in 1918 remains a horrific testament to racial violence in Georgia, as her tragic death and the loss of her unborn child eventually galvanized a national movement to seek justice through federal legislation. Sitting inches from a monster, FBI agent Robert Ressler listens to the chilling words of Ed Kemper, a moment of psychological tension where the killer calmly reminded his guest that a simple locked door was no protection against him. Left behind in the vast expanse of the Great Barrier Reef in 1998, Tom and Eileen Lonergan were abandoned by their dive boat, leading to a frantic search that ultimately found only the silence of the deep blue sea. In the shark-infested waters of 1942, Charles Jackson French became a hero of the Pacific, on swimming for hours to pull a raft of wounded soldiers to safety after their ship was sunk during the fierce battle for Guadalcanal. This portrait captures a young man who journeyed from the indoctrination of the Hitler Youth to a life of terror in Germany, eventually facing the gallows for crimes against thousands of women in a post-war pursuit of justice. Drenched in the grime of 36 hours of continuous combat, Frank Pomeroy sits exhausted on the island of Peleliu in 1944, his hollow eyes reflecting the unimaginable toll of a brutal campaign that tested every fiber of a Marine's soul. Every muscle strained and weary, a Marine is helped aboard a transport ship in 1944 after days of relentless fighting on Engebe Island, capturing the raw, physical exhaustion that defined the grueling island-hopping campaigns of the Pacific Theater. These 14-year-old boys, captured by American forces in 1945, serve as a haunting reminder of the final desperate days of the Nazi regime, when even children were pushed onto the front lines of a war that was already lost. In a moment of royal elegance at Balmoral in 1896, Tsar Nicholas II and his wife Alexandra present their firstborn, Olga, to Queen Victoria, marking a brief and peaceful union between the great imperial dynasties of the 19th century. Found in a state of unimaginable neglect in 2022, the story of Lacey Fletcher is a tragic call for compassion, as the young woman spent over a decade forgotten on a couch, a victim of systemic and parental failure. The mysterious 2013 disappearance of Maureen Kelly in the Washington wilderness remains a haunting puzzle, as she stepped into the woods on a spiritual quest and vanished, leaving behind nothing but a single trail of footprints in the mud. Wandering the streets of London in the 1930s with a wooden rack strapped to her back, a young girl brings the joy of reading to her neighbors, renting out her personal library for just a few pennies a week. The spirit of the samurai lived on in this 1930 Japanese pageant, where traditional armor and ancient customs were proudly displayed to a modernizing nation, bridging the gap between a feudal past and a rapidly changing 20th century world. Navigating the debris of a 1943 Berlin street, a woman pushes her pram while wearing a gas mask, a surreal and somber image of daily survival amidst the constant threat of Allied air raids during the Second World War. Straining under the weight of tradition, a porter competes in the basket-carrying championships of 1930s Covent Garden, demonstrating the incredible physical strength and balance required to navigate the busy, historic markets of central London during its commercial peak. A towering monument to the end of the Great War, this massive pyramid of captured German cannons stood on the Champs-Élysées in 1919, serving as a powerful and grim symbol of victory for the jubilant crowds in Paris. For the first time in recorded history, snow fell on the palm trees of southern Florida in 1977, allowing this surprised family to experience a winter wonderland in a landscape that had never before seen a single white flake. With boards in hand and a sense of rebellious freedom, these skater girls of 1992 captured the DIY energy of a subculture that was just beginning to claim its place on the sidewalks and in the hearts of youth. The skyline of New York City was forever changed on September 11, 2001, as the world watched in stunned silence while the Twin Towers burned, marking the beginning of an era defined by loss, resilience, and global transformation. Dressed in their iconic pinstriped uniforms and face paint, the Baseball Furies from 1979 remain a vivid symbol of cinematic urban grit, capturing the stylized and menacing spirit of the gangs that roamed the neon-lit streets of New York. At the Bronx Zoo in 1977, Sandra the orangutan sits in a moment of profound, quiet reflection. Her expressive eyes and weary posture captured by Nina Leon to remind us of the deep emotional lives shared by our primate kin. Surrounded by the cluttered wisdom of his Princeton study in 1948, Albert Einstein leans into a lifetime of revolutionary thought, a candid portrait of the man who reshaped our entire understanding of time, space, and the physical universe. Beneath the bustling streets of 1955 New York City, Marilyn Monroe steps into the anonymity of Grand Central Station, a rare and fleeting glimpse of the world's most famous woman seeking a moment of normalcy amidst the urban rush. In this charming snapshot from 1912, a young boy proudly poses with his faithful dog and a sleek pedal car, capturing a timeless innocence and the simple, the universal joys of childhood during the early dawn of the automotive age. The dawn of modern medicine is revealed in this 1884 clinical scene, where a patient undergoes a neurological examination using a primitive electrical device, reflecting the era's experimental and often mysterious attempts to map the human nervous system. Caught in a whirlwind of motion in 1956 London, a couple surrenders to the electric energy of the jive. It's their vibrant dance representing a post-war generation eager to break free from tradition and embrace the pulse of modern music. Along the dusty banks of the Nile in 1875, a water porter carries his heavy burden through the streets of Cairo, a testament to the ancient, grueling labor that sustained life in the desert long before modern plumbing arrived. A curious display of vintage technology unfolds at the 1930 London hairdressing exhibition, where a woman bravely sits beneath an elaborate hair steaming apparatus, highlighting the lengths society has always gone to in the pursuit of the perfect look. In the humming hub of 1914 Salt Lake City, these dedicated telephone switchboard operators manage a complex web of human connection, their steady hands and focused minds literally wiring together the voices of a rapidly growing and modernizing Utah. The worlds of fantasy and reality collide on a 1954 film set as Japanese actress Momoko Kochi shares a quiet moment with the original Godzilla, the towering beast that would soon become a global icon of nuclear-age cinematic terror. Bathed in the neon glow of 1968, Piccadilly Circus stands as the vibrant, beating heart of London, where the iconic signs and rushing crowds capture the height of the swinging 60s in one of the world's most famous intersections. Years before he became a legendary filmmaker, a young Stanley Kubrick roamed the streets of 1946 New York with a camera, capturing the raw, unscripted drama of everyday life that would eventually inform his cinematic and visual masterpieces. In a quirky display of 1897 fitness, a man uses a wooden barrel as a makeshift gym on a New York beach, proving that the human drive for physical health and self-improvement has always found creative ways to flourish outdoors. Against the backdrop of a darkening 1938 Germany, a man uses a simple funnel to refuel his modest scooter, a quiet, domestic moment that stands in stark contrast to the massive industrial and military buildup consuming the nation around him. The ethereal presence of Tilda Swinton is captured in 1988, her striking features and avant-garde style already signaling the arrival of a transformative artist who would spend the coming decades defying every convention of traditional Hollywood and international cinema. Long before his historic presidency, a young Barack Obama traveled to Kenya in 1987 to visit his grandmother, a personal journey of discovery that connected him to his heritage and the distant roots of his own remarkable American story. The chilling face of Juan Fernando Hermosa belies his status as Ecuador's youngest serial killer, a teenager whose violent spree in the early 90s ended in a short sentence and a swift, brutal street justice that left no winners. A dark mystery surrounds the 2007 tragedy of Chris Benoit, as a hauntingly prophetic Wikipedia edit appeared hours before the discovery of his family, casting a long, unresolved shadow over the final violent acts of the famous professional wrestler. The corridors of power were shaken in 1998 by the relationship between Bill Clinton and Monica Lewinsky, and a scandal captured in this moment that would eventually lead to an American impeachment and change the landscape of political media forever. In a playful act of 1970s rebellion, a father and his children pose for a photo designed specifically to annoy their mother, capturing the light-hearted humor and timeless family dynamics that define the messy, the joyful reality of domestic life. The horrific scars on the back of a former slave named Gordon serve as a silent, searing indictment of American history in 1863, providing the Union with a visual truth of the brutality that fueled the Civil War. Equipped with traditional snow goggles carved from bone and ivory, a caribou Enoch man stands in the 1921 Northwest Territories, showcasing the brilliant indigenous ingenuity required to survive and navigate the blinding glare of the vast Canadian Arctic. History bridges the generations in 1935 as young children sit in rapt attention, listening to the stories of an elderly Civil War veteran who carried the living memory of a conflict that had redefined the American nation decades earlier. Perched high above the city in 1910, a stone gargoyle keeps its eternal watch over Paris from the towers of Notre Dame, a silent witness to a century of revolution, war, and the slow passage of French history. A startling look at 1960s safety standards shows a world where common sense often replaced regulation, featuring a car seat that would be unthinkable today, reminding us how far we have come in protecting our most vulnerable passengers. The soot-stained faces of these Pennsylvania boys in 1911 tell a heartbreaking story of stolen childhood as they spent their days working in the dark, dangerous depths of coal mines long before child labor laws offered them protection. Emerging from the early 1900s, this vintage Santa Claus presents a far more mysterious and austere figure than his modern counterpart, reflecting the folk traditions and varied cultural roots that eventually merged into our contemporary holiday legend. In a landmark moment for civil rights, this 1970 portrait captures Mississippi's first legally recognized interracial marriage, a courageous union that defied decades of systemic prejudice and signaled a slow, necessary change in the heart of the American South. With a blend of 1969 pragmatism and maternal creativity, a mother uses a humble trash can to keep her baby safe while she crochets in the park, a humorous snapshot of the unconventional parenting styles of a bygone era. A group of curious cats gathers on the green in this whimsical 1930s photograph, capturing a playful and light-hearted moment of feline community that seems to mirror the social gatherings of the humans living in the world around them. The anticipation of a 1910s Christmas is frozen in time as children huddle before a glowing fireplace, their small figures silhouetted against the warmth as they wait for the magic of a holiday that remains a cherished tradition. In one of the most bizarre images of 1933, a cat appears to hang a row of tame rats on a washing line to dry, a staged and surreal photograph that reflects the era's fascination with oddities and animal training. Braving the heavy snows of 1929 Chicago, a determined mailman hauls a heavy load of Christmas parcels, embodying the tireless spirit of service that ensured holiday cheer reached every doorstep despite the harsh and unforgiving winter weather of Illinois. The profound relief of a 1953 reunion is captured as a mother finally embraces her son following his harrowing escape from a North Korean prison camp, a moment of pure, agonizing joy amidst the scars of the war. Dressed in the traditional soot-covered garb of their trade, a pair of chimney sweeps walk the streets of 1984 Tallinn, keeping alive an ancient and lucky profession that has remained a storied part of Estonian culture for centuries. In a legendary 1926 publicity stunt, the enigmatic Greta Garbo comes face-to-face with the iconic Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer lion, on a meeting of two Hollywood powerhouses that helped define the glamorous and often dangerous aesthetic of the silent film era. Shielding their eyes against the blinding flash of the future, military observers watch an atomic test at the Nevada site in 1953, witnessing the awesome and terrifying power of a weapon that would define the global Cold War. A room erupts in genuine joy during this 1955 birthday surprise, capturing the mid-century American ideal of domestic happiness and the simple, shared celebrations that brought families and friends together in the post-war era of prosperity and hope. The spirit of the French Resistance is etched into this 1944 Paris street, where ordinary citizens built makeshift barricades to defy Nazi occupiers, a testament to the bravery and grit of a city fighting to reclaim its stolen freedom. Suspended high above the ground in the 1930s, these fearless telephone linemen work amidst a dizzying web of wires, performing the dangerous, essential labor that kept the world talking during the rapid expansion of global telecommunications and infrastructure. A bond beyond species is shared in 1984 as German circus performer Ursula Butcher stands fearlessly with her favorite polar bear, Alaska, a remarkable and controversial display of trust between a legendary trainer and one of nature's most formidable predators. Perched on the dizzying heights of Glacier Point in 1902, these adventurous tourists gaze out over the vast majesty of Yosemite, capturing the early days of American national parks and our enduring, humble fascination with the great wild outdoors. Captured in a raw explosion of energy in 1991, Eddie Vedder pours his soul into a live performance, an iconic image by Chris Cafaro that perfectly encapsulates the intensity and grit of the emerging Seattle grunge movement's early days. The devastating toll of the Blitz is visible in 1945 London as a young boy sits amidst the rubble of his home where his parents were lost to a rocket, a heartbreaking symbol of the war's youngest victims. Stretching as far as the eye can see in 1872, these massive lumber piles in Ottawa represent the backbone of the Canadian economy, showcasing the vast scale of the timber industry that built a nation from the wilderness. Defying the traffic of 1932 London, a man gracefully pedals a penny farthing over the Lambeth Bridge, a nostalgic and eccentric nod to a bygone era of transportation that stood in sharp contrast to the modern city rising around him. The pioneers of America's national pastime are honored in these 1880s studio portraits, featuring baseball players from New York and Philadelphia who helped transform a simple game into a professional sport and a fundamental part of cultural identity. In a quiet domestic moment from 1950, Kirk Douglas teaches his young son Michael the art of shaving, a tender scene of fatherly guidance between two men who would both become legendary titans of the American silver screen. Amidst the relentless shelling of the 1968 siege at Khe Sanh, an American soldier finds a brief moment of humanity, cradling a small dog to offer comfort and protection in a landscape otherwise defined by the violence of war. Battling an invisible environmental threat in the 1890s, these workers climb a massive elm in Massachusetts to destroy gypsy moth eggs, a grueling and dangerous task that marked one of the earliest organized efforts at large-scale pest control. Two of music's most legendary voices find a moment of quiet friendship in the early 80s as Michael Jackson and Freddie Mercury hang out, a rare meeting of creative geniuses whose combined influence would forever shape the world's pop landscape. Coolly defying death in 1961, Swedish Major Eric Bonde smokes a cigarette after surviving 2 shots to the chest during the Congo crisis, an image of hardened military stoicism that became a legendary testament to his incredible physical resilience. In a quintessential display of British resolve, a woman calmly drinks her tea amidst the ruins of a 1940 bombing raid, a powerful symbol of the keep calm and carry on spirit that defined London during the Blitz. The streets of 1979 Iran are filled with thousands of women protesting the new revolutionary government's dress codes, a brave and defiant stand for personal freedom that continues to resonate in the ongoing struggle for human rights today. Balanced precariously on a narrow iron beam high above the city in 1920, a construction worker, Collier, poses with a casual confidence that hides the immense danger faced by the men who built the world's iconic skyscrapers. Returning to a segregated America in 1936, Jesse Owens stands as a four-time Olympic gold medalist, having humiliated a hateful ideology on the world stage. Yet he remained a hero who still had to fight for basic equality. The haunting gaze of Edgar Allan Poe is captured in this 1849 daguerreotype, taken just months before his mysterious death, providing a final, somber look at the master of macabre literature whose dark imagination continues to influence the world. The future of travel takes flight in 1909 at the very first Paris Air Show, where early pioneers of aviation gathered to showcase the fragile, wooden machines that would eventually shrink the globe and change the course of human history. In a legendary meeting of giants on the 1983 set of Conan the Destroyer, Arnold Schwarzenegger stands alongside Wilt Chamberlain and Andre the Giant, creating a truly epic image of physical prowess and cinematic charisma from the 80s. The battered hull of the USS Galena tells the story of the 1862 Battle of Drury's Bluff, as the Union ironclad sits scarred by Confederate fire, marking a pivotal and brutal moment in the naval history of the American Civil War. Against the stark backdrop of the barbed wire at Ravensbrück in 1945, these female prisoners stand as resilient survivors of one of history's darkest chapters, their liberation finally revealing the full scale of the horrors they had endured for years. In a whimsical scene from 1953 Paris, a group of dogs is led on a stylish walk through the city streets, a charming Robert Duano photograph that perfectly captures the playful and elegant spirit of post-war French life and culture. In a shimmering 1931 moment of Hollywood history, Albert Einstein and his wife Elsa join the legendary Charlie Chaplin for the premiere of City Lights, bridging the worlds of theoretical physics and cinematic genius in one frame. The weary gaze of young William Tangle in 1936 Alabama offers a haunting look into the generational struggles of cotton sharecropping, captured by Walker Evans to document the quiet, persistent hardships of the American rural South. Propelled by curiosity and a unique 1932 design, Dr. J.A. Purves pilots his massive Dynasphere across a beach, a fleeting vision of an alternative automotive future that prioritized single-wheeled motion over the standard four-wheel car. In 1933, cosmetics giant Max Factor applies the cold precision of his beauty micrometer to a young woman's face, illustrating the era's obsessive quest to quantify physical perfection through the lens of early Hollywood cinematic standards. Pedaling through the foggy lanes of 1920s London, a Wall's ice cream vendor brings a sweet reprieve to the city streets, his uniform and bicycle representing a classic era of mobile commerce and traditional British summertime. Breaking through gender barriers in 1925, the women of the Achilles Serre Private Fire Brigade prepare for competition on their motorcycle, proving that the courage and skill required for emergency service were never limited to men alone. Dangling hundreds of feet above the 1932 New York skyline, ironworkers casually share a meal on a steel beam, creating an iconic image of the fearless labor and industrial grit that built the modern American urban landscape. Before he became a global action superstar, Jean-Claude Van Damme donned the original insect-like predator suit in 1987, a rare behind-the-scenes glimpse of a creature design that was eventually scrapped for the iconic hunter we know. In a powerful symbol of total victory in 1945, Winston Churchill sits defiantly in Hitler's personal chair amidst the ruins of Berlin, marking the final absolute collapse of the regime that had once threatened all of Europe. Sheriff's Deputy Ora Ralph Thomas became a legend of 1925 Illinois when he successfully fought off 3 Klan assassins in a final, lethal stand, on sacrificing his own life to ensure that his murderers did not escape justice. The hollow eyes of this 32-year-old mother in 1936 reveal the crushing weight of raising 10 children during the Great Depression, an evocative Dorothea Lange portrait that humanizes the staggering poverty of the Dust Bowl era. In the sun-drenched streets of 1947 Italy, young men carry long, delicate rods of pasta to dry in the open air, preserving a traditional culinary art form that remained essential during the nation's post-war recovery period. Long before he became a global martial arts icon, a young Bruce Lee stands beside his legendary master IP Man in the 1960s, a rare moment showing the foundational training of the man who revolutionized combat cinema. Behind the scenes of the 1959 space race, Judith Love Cohen worked tirelessly on NASA's guidance systems, a brilliant engineering feat that would later prove vital in bringing the endangered crew of Apollo 13 safely back to Earth. Tears of a lifetime flow during this 2010 reunion as North and South Korean relatives share a final, agonizing goodbye, having been separated for over 57 years by a political border that remains a symbol of division. Battling the dry, unforgiving soil of 1937 West Texas, a tenant farmer's wife guides her plow through the dust, embodying the relentless physical labor and iron will required to survive the environmental catastrophe of the American Great Plains. The frantic energy of 1907 Lower Manhattan comes alive in Washington Market, where horse-drawn wagons and surging crowds create a chaotic symphony of commerce in a city that was rapidly becoming the financial center of the world. Standing with a quiet, imposing dignity in 1877, Minneconjou Lakota, Chief Touch the Clouds represents the strength and sorrow of a people fighting to preserve their way of life against the relentless expansion of the American frontier. Muscular laborers in 1909 Detroit toil in a massive trench to install the city's water infrastructure, a gritty reminder of the invisible. Heavy work that allowed the budding automotive capital to support its exploding and thirsty population. A team of powerful draft animals hauls a gargantuan spruce log through the Washington wilderness in 1905, showcasing the monumental scale of the Pacific Northwest logging industry that fueled the construction boom of the early 20th century. Working in the shadows of occupied Lyon, my 20-year-old artist Josette Molland used her creative talents to forge life-saving documents for those fleeing the Nazis, turning her art into a silent but deadly weapon of the French resistance. Forgotten in a dusty Swedish basement for decades, the vibrant abstract canvases of Hilma af Klint were rediscovered in 1986, are forcing the art world to rewrite history and acknowledge a woman as a true pioneer of non-representational painting. Bundled against the biting Atlantic wind of the 1890s, pedestrians take a wintry stroll across the newly completed Brooklyn Bridge, marveling at the soaring cables and the majestic snowy views of a growing New York City harbor. Under the sprawling trees of Golden Gate Park in 1920, and a group of friends enjoys a rustic camping trip beside their Briscoe sedan, capturing the early American love affair with the open road and the freedom of automotive travel. In a charming 1879 photograph from California, a horse-drawn cart passes directly through the trunk of a giant sequoia, illustrating the whimsical ways early tourists interacted with the ancient, towering wonders of the Sierra Nevada mountains. Fearless photographer Margaret Bourke White scales the dizzying heights of the Chrysler Building in 1935, perching precariously on a stainless steel eagle to capture the perfect, breathtaking angle of the soaring Manhattan skyline far below her feet. Silhouetted against the twilight of 1935 London, a dedicated lamplighter performs his nightly rounds, maintaining a flickering, traditional glow in the city's streets even as the era of modern electric lighting began to take hold. Elegant and refined, a woman and 3 young girls enjoy a quiet stroll through Madison Park in 1905, their formal attire and leisurely pace reflecting the dignified social atmosphere of New York City during the early Edwardian era. In a 1947 classroom, elementary students diligently practice their finger placement on small, silent keyboards. Following their teacher's lead in a clever visual method of musical instruction that made learning the piano accessible to every child. Grit and determination define these 2 women in 1918 as they work together to grind a heavy axe, a powerful image of the expanded roles women filled during the labor shortages and social shifts of the First World War. In an adorable 1895 studio portrait, 3 sets of twin girls pose together in matching dresses, capturing a whimsical moment of Victorian symmetry and the timeless fascination with the unique bond shared by siblings born on the same day. The shared creative legacy of the Coppola family is captured in 1988 as a young Nicolas Cage stands with his father August, reflecting the deep intellectual and artistic roots that would eventually define both of their remarkable American careers. With a heavy block of ice balanced on his shoulder, and a delivery man makes his rounds in 1928, performing an essential daily service that kept household food fresh in the years before electric refrigeration became a common domestic luxury. Walking through a gauntlet of hate in 1957, 15-year-old Dorothy Counts maintained an incredible, quiet dignity as she became the first black student at her North Carolina high school, a pivotal moment in the American civil rights struggle. Spanning decades of cinematic greatness, this 2025 portrait of Pedro Pascal, alongside a classic 1982 image of Harrison Ford, highlights the enduring charisma of leading men who have defined the heroic landscape of modern Hollywood across generations. The sheer scale of American domestic surveillance is revealed in this 1942 photograph of the FBI's massive fingerprint archives, where rows of towering files held the biometric records of millions in a pre-digital era of law enforcement. In the hazy, creative atmosphere of the 1970s, a contemplative Marlon Brando shares a moment with photographer Mary Ellen Mark, capturing the legendary actor's intense and often elusive presence during the height of his influential film career. The simple, golden joy of childhood is found in 1940 New Mexico as a young boy roasts sweet corn over a hot stove, a timeless image of rural life and the basic pleasures that sustained families in Chamisil. Striding through the 1920s with confidence, these men sport Oxford bags, the famously wide-legged trousers that became a hallmark of rebellious youth fashion and a distinct symbol of the flamboyant, post-war style of university life. Demonstrating the birth of modern physical therapy, a child with polio takes determined steps between parallel bars in 1953, showcasing the resilience of young patients and the medical advancements that fought against a devastating global epidemic. Amidst the relentless scars of war in 1945 Budapest, the city's resilient spirit begins to stir as citizens navigate the ruins of a conflict that had left their historic capital shattered, but ready to begin the long journey home. Beneath the warm Egyptian sun of 1935, workers labor on the construction site of the Khedive Ismail Monument in Alexandria, a grand public project captured by Umberto Dorés to document the architectural evolution of the historic coastal city. The industrial precision of 1941 is on full display as the first Winchester-produced M1 Garand rifles roll off the line, marking a critical moment in the American mobilization that would soon arm millions of soldiers for global conflict. The deep, resonant bronze of the University of Chicago's chapel bells leaves an English foundry in 1932, beginning a long journey across the Atlantic to take their place in a soaring tower where they would ring for generations. High above the dusty plains of Benares, Queen Elizabeth II surveys her vast Indian territory from an ornate howdah in 1961, embodying the final shimmering echoes of an empire that once spanned the entire globe with its quiet, regal power. Walking through the sun-drenched ruins of Persepolis, the young queen reflects on the rise and fall of the ancient Achaemenid Empire, where the silent, crumbling pillars of Iran offer a poignant reminder that even the greatest kingdoms eventually fade. Standing 9 feet tall and weighing nearly 500 pounds, the Queen's magnificent wedding cake became a towering symbol of post-war hope in 1947, crafted with rare ingredients gifted from across the world to celebrate a royal love. Caught in a rare, candid moment of the mid-1970s, the Queen sheds her formal royal persona for a brief snapshot that reveals a more private woman, proving that even a global icon enjoys the simple, unscripted beauty of life. While wandering through a tranquil hotel garden in Tokyo, the Queen finds a moment of serene contemplation during her 1975 visit to Japan, showcasing the quiet grace she carried through every corner of an increasingly modern and changing world. Between the frantic takes of a galaxy far, far away, Kenny Baker takes a very human break inside his R2-D2 suit to enjoy a quick sandwich, revealing the humble, everyday reality behind the cinematic magic of the Star Wars set. Amidst the looming shadows of war in 1942, RAF pilot Francis Mellersh finds a moment of civilian normalcy in Essex, calmly reading a classic novel while receiving a haircut before returning to the dangerous open skies over war-torn England. In a daring feat of industrial engineering, experimental racing cars speed around the futuristic test track built directly onto the roof of the Fiat factory in Turin, capturing the bold, roaring spirit of Italian innovation back in 1923. Spanning the rugged wilderness of Oregon at the turn of the century, this massive steel railroad bridge stands as a testament to the iron-willed laborers who connected the American West through grit and engineering during the early 1900s. Thousands of voices rise in a thunderous display of unity at Madison Square Garden in 1937 as New Yorkers gather for a massive rally to denounce the growing shadow of Nazism and defend the core values of human freedom. At their sun-soaked Los Angeles home in 1972, the youngest Jacksons share a playful moment together, capturing Randy, Janet, and Michael long before they would transform into the most famous and influential musical dynasty the world had ever seen. Captured in the 1860s, General Ulysses S. Grant stands perfectly still against a hidden posture brace, a necessary technical sacrifice of the era to ensure that his stern, battle-worn features were preserved forever in this rare, unmoving photographic light. The legendary Rat Pack exudes effortless cool under the neon glow of Las Vegas in 1960, turning the Sands into the epicenter of American glamour, where music, whiskey, and laughter defined an unforgettable era of high-stakes entertainment and style. In the golden light of his California ranch in 1992, Ronald Reagan shares a relaxed laugh with Mikhail Gorbachev, marking a deeply personal and peaceful coda to the decades of tension that once defined the long, cold nuclear standoff.